Hibernate interview questions and answers. Beginner means advanced. Introduction. Hibernate is a popular object relational mapping (ORM) framework for Java that simplifies database operations. Hibernate is widely used for enterprise applications, Spring Boot applications, database persistence, ORM mapping, transactional systems. Hibernate provides automatic SQL generation, object relational mapping, caching, transaction management, database abstraction. 1 to 20. Hibernate basics. What is Hibernate? Hibernate is an ORM framework for Java. What is LRM? Object relational mapping between Java objects and database tables. Why use Hibernate? Reduces JDBC boilerplate, automatic SQL generation, database independence, easier persistence handling. Hibernate versus JDBC? JDBC requires manual SQL handling. Hibernate automates ORM. Storing object state in database. What is entity class? Java class mapped to database table. Entity example. @entity, public class user. What is @entity annotation? What is table annotation? @table, name users. What is @ID annotation? Defines primary key. Primary key example, @ID private long ID. What is @generated value? @generated value, strategy equals generation type identity. What is session factory? Factory for creating Hibernate sessions. What is session in Hibernate? Main interface for database operations. What is transaction in Hibernate? Unit of work executed atomically. Save entity example, session.save user. Update entity example, session.update user. Delete entity example, session.delete user. Fetch entity example, session.get user.class 1L. What is Hibernate configuration file? XML properties configuration for Hibernate setup. 21 to 40. Mapping and relationships. What is hibernate.cfg.xml? Main Hibernate configuration file. Database configuration example. Property name Hibernate dialect. What is dialect in Hibernate? Database-specific SQL generation configuration. What is mapping in Hibernate? Connecting Java classes to database tables. What is one-to-one relationship? One entity linked to one entity. One-to-one example, @one-to-one private address. What is one-to-many relationship? One entity linked to multiple entities. One-to-many example, @one-to-many mapped by user. What is many-to-one relationship? Multiple entities linked to one entity. Many-to-one example, @many-to-one private user. What is many-to-many relationship? Multiple entities linked bidirectionally. Many-to-many example, @many-to-many. What is @join column? Defines foreign key column. Join column example, @join column name equals user ID. What is cascade operation? Propagates operations between related entities. Cascade types? Persist, merge, remove, all. What is orphan removal? Deletes child entities automatically. What is eager fetching? Loads related entities immediately. What is lazy fetching? Loads related entities only when needed. Eager versus lazy fetching. Lazy improves performance by delaying loading. 41 to 70. Queries, caching, and transactions. What is HQL? Hibernate query language. HQL example, from user where name equals John. HQL uses entity names instead of table names. What is Criteria API? Programmatic query construction API. Criteria example, criteria builder.create query user class. What is native SQL query? Raw SQL executed through Hibernate. Native query example, session create native query, select star from users. What is pagination in Hibernate? Retrieving records in chunks. Pagination example, query.set first result 0. Query.set max results 10. What is first level cache? Session level cache enabled by default. What is second level cache? Shared cache across sessions. Benefits of caching? Reduced database calls, improved performance, common second level cache providers, Cache, Hazelcast, Infinispan. What is query cache? Caches query results. What is dirty checking? Automatically detecting entity changes. What is flushing in Hibernate? Synchronizing session state with database. What is flush mode? Controls session synchronization behavior. What is transaction management? Managing database consistency. Transaction example. Transaction tx equals session.begin transaction. What is commit? Permanently saves transaction changes. What is rollback? Reverts transaction changes. What is ACID property? Atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability. What is optimistic locking? Version-based concurrency control. Optimistic locking example. At version, private int version. What is pessimistic locking? Database level locking strategy. What is n+1 query problem? Excessive queries due to lazy loading. How to solve n+1 problem. Cap, fetch, join. Cap, batch, fetching. Cap, entity graph. What is fetch join in HQL? Select U from user U, join fetch U.orders. What is batch fetching? Loading related entities in batches. What is entity lifecycle in Hibernate? Transient, persistent, detached, removed, 71 to 100, advanced Hibernate and best practices. What is transient state? Entity not associated with session. What is persistent state? Entity managed by Hibernate session. What is detached state? Entity disconnected from session. What is removed state? Entity marked for deletion. What is merge in Hibernate? Session.merge user. Save versus persist. Persist follows JPA standard. Save returns identifier. Update versus merge. Merge works with detached entities safely. What is JPA? Java Persistence API specification. Hibernate is implementation. JPA is specification. What is Spring Data JPA? Simplifies JPA repository development. Repository example. Public interface user repo extends JPA repository user. LONG. What is inheritance mapping? Mapping inheritance hierarchies to tables. Single table, joined, table per class. What is @mapped superclass? Base class mapping support. What is @embeddable? Embedded reusable value object. What is @embedded ID? Composite primary key mapping. Common Hibernate interview topics. Entity mapping, caching, HQL, transactions, lazy loading, common Hibernate problems, lazy initialization exception, n+1 queries, memory leaks, performance bottlenecks. What is lazy initialization exception? Accessing lazy loaded entity outside session. Best practices in Hibernate? Use lazy loading carefully, optimize queries, use pagination, manage transactions properly. What is connection pooling? Reusing database connections efficiently. Common connection pools, Hikari CP, C3PO. What is schema generation? Automatic table creation update. Hibernate schema generation example. Hibernate.hbm2ddl.auto equals update. What is audit logging in Hibernate? Tracking entity changes. What is nverse? Hibernate auditing module. How to become strong in Hibernate? Practice entity mapping. Optimize queries. Understand transactions and caching. Biggest Hibernate interview concept. Efficient ORM mapping and transaction management. Key Hibernate interview focus. Entity relationships, caching, lazy loading, and query optimization. Why is Hibernate popular? Simplifies Java persistence and reduces database boilerplate code. Final summary. Hibernate interviews focus on ORM concepts, entity relationships, HQL and Criteria API, transactions and caching, lazy eager loading, performance optimization, JPA integration, enterprise persistence architecture. Key idea. Strong Hibernate developers understand ORM mapping, efficient query handling, transaction management, and enterprise database optimization.